I thought the biggest battle I'd face was surviving a week with my impossibly rude teenage niece. I was tragically mistaken. The real fight was for her life, after she went missing in the middle of the night. My sister Laura has always had a flair for the dramatic, so when she called me sobbing a week ago, I wasn't immediately alarmed. It turned out the tears were tears of joy. She and her husband Mark had won an all-inclusive, last-minute 7-day cruise to the Bahamas. The catch? It left in 48 hours. The second catch? Their 16-year-old daughter, my niece Chloe. Laura launched into a monologue that was part plea, part guilt trip. I was the only one they trusted. I work from home, so my schedule is flexible, and it would be a great bonding opportunity for me and Chloe. I hesitated. I love my quiet, meticulously organized life. My one-bedroom apartment is my sanctuary, a calm space free of chaos and teenage angst. Chloe, on the other hand, is a lot. The last time I saw her at Christmas, she spent the entire time glued to her phone, only looking up to complain about the Wi-Fi speed. But Laura was laying it on thick, and honestly, a small part of me felt bad. It was a once-in-a-lifetime trip for them. So, against my better judgment, I caved. "Of course," I said, forcing a cheerful tone. "Chloe can stay with me, it'll be fun." That single word, fun, would come back to haunt me. The trouble started the moment I picked her up. She slouched into my car, tossing her designer suitcase into the back seat without a word of thanks. A cloud of expensive perfume and teenage indifference filled the vehicle. She didn't even look up from her phone, just grunted a hey in my general direction. When we got to my apartment, she surveyed my cozy living room with a look of disdain. "It's cute," she said, the same way one might describe a hamster cage. She walked into the guest room I'd spent all morning preparing, with fresh sheets and her favorite snacks on the nightstand. She dropped her bag on the floor. "Where's the ensuite?" she asked, already texting someone. I blinked. "The what?" "The private bathroom," she said, finally gracing me with eye contact, her expression one of profound disappointment. "Mom said you had a nice place." "It is a nice place," I said, my patience already thinning. "It has one bathroom, which we will be sharing. It's just down the hall." She let out an audible scoff and turned her back to me, effectively ending the conversation. I told myself to be patient. She's a teenager. Her parents just left. She's probably just acting out. But the acting out quickly morphed into a full-blown reign of terror. She treated my home like a hotel, and me like the hired help. Wet towels were left on my hardwood floors. Empty plates with crusted-on food were abandoned on the coffee table. She never once flushed the toilet. On the second day, I cooked a lasagna from scratch, one of my favorite comfort foods. She took one look at it and wrinkled her nose. "I don't really do casseroles," she said. "I'm more in the mood for sushi. You can just DoorDash it. Get me a dragon roll and some spicy tuna." I stood there, oven mitts in hand, utterly stunned. "Chloe, I just cooked dinner for us." "And I don't want it," she shrugged, already pulling out her phone. "Just order the sushi, and I'm out of my sparkling water. Can you go grab some more when you have a chance?" It was the tone that did it. The casual, dismissive expectation that I would drop everything and cater to her whims. I managed to grit my teeth and say, "We're eating the lasagna I made," and left it at that. She didn't eat a bite. Instead, she sat at the table across from me, loudly sighing and tapping on her phone until I was done. The next few days were a blur of similar incidents. She'd snap her fingers at me from the couch when she wanted a drink. She'd ask me to find her phone charger, which was usually 3 feet away from her. She was a queen in her own mind, and I was her court servant. I was counting the minutes until Laura and Mark came home. The breaking point came on Friday night. I had invited two of my closest friends, Maria and Ben, over for a quiet dinner and a board game night. I'd told Chloe about it days in advance, and she'd rolled her eyes and said she'd be in her room, which was a relief. We were halfway through our main course, laughing about something Ben said, when Chloe emerged from the hallway. She was wearing a crop top and a skirt that was barely there, her face plastered with makeup. She completely ignored Maria and Ben, walking straight up to the table and stopping beside me. The room went silent. She held out her empty water glass, wiggling it in front of my face. "Auntie," she said, her voice dripping with condescension and loud enough for everyone to hear, "this isn't going to refill itself." My friends stared, their forks frozen halfway to their mouths. I could feel the blood rush to my cheeks, a hot wave of pure humiliation and rage. I looked at the smug, entitled smirk on her face, a face so much like my sister's. And in that moment, something inside me just snapped. The years of biting my tongue, of playing the cool, understanding aunt, evaporated. I placed my knife and fork down on my plate with a deliberate, soft click. I looked up at her, right into her defiant eyes, and I smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. "You know what, Chloe?" I said, my voice dangerously calm. "You're absolutely right." I stood up slowly, deliberately, not taking my eyes off hers. The smugness in her expression faltered for a second, replaced by a flicker of confusion. I reached out and took the empty glass from her hand. Her fingers were limp as I plucked it from her grasp. My friends, Maria and Ben, were silent, watching this bizarre scene unfold like a tennis match. For a moment, Chloe probably thought I was going to do it, that her public power play had worked, and I was trotting off to the kitchen to fetch her water like a good little servant. But I didn't turn towards the kitchen. I walked to the front door of my apartment. I twisted the deadbolt, pulled the door open, and placed her glass gently on the welcome mat in the hallway. Then I turned back to her, leaving the door ajar. "There," I said, my voice still unnervingly pleasant. "The kitchen is that way. Since you're already dressed and on your feet, you can get it yourself. While you're at it, you can grab the trash from the kitchen and your bathroom. The chute is just down the hall to the left." The color drained from her face. "What? What are you doing?" she stammered, her voice a little shaky now. "Are you insane?" "No, I'm done," I replied, crossing my arms. I gestured back towards my stunned friends. "This is Maria and Ben. You will apologize to them for interrupting their dinner. Then you will go back to your room, change into something appropriate for being inside a home, and you will come back out here and clean up the mess you left in the living room. Or you can leave, but if you walk out that door now, you'd better have a plan for where you're staying, because you won't be coming back in." Her jaw dropped. "You can't do that. I'm going to call my mom." "Go ahead," I said with a shrug. "Her phone is probably at the bottom of the ocean right now, but feel free. Let her know that her daughter is being kicked out of her sister's house for treating it like a hotel, and its owner like a slave. I'm sure she'll be thrilled to have her vacation cut short to deal with your stunning lack of manners. The choice is yours, Chloe." We were locked in a silent battle of wills for what felt like an eternity. Maria and Ben looked like they wanted the floor to swallow them whole. Chloe's eyes darted between me, my friends, and the open door, as if calculating her odds. I didn't flinch. I just stood there, waiting. Finally, with a cry of pure rage, she spun around and stomped back down the hall, slamming her bedroom door so hard a picture frame rattled on the wall. I let out a breath I didn't realize I was holding and closed the front door. I turned back to my friends, a sheepish smile on my face. "I am so sorry about that," I said, slumping back into my chair. "More wine?" Ben just stared at me, a slow grin spreading across his face. "That," he said, raising his glass, "was the most incredible thing I've ever seen." Maria nodded in agreement, her eyes wide. We tried to salvage the evening, but the tension lingered. About 20 minutes later, Chloe emerged from her room. She was wearing sweatpants and a t-shirt, her face scrubbed clean of makeup and streaked with angry tears. She didn't look at any of us. She marched into the living room, gathered her dirty plates and glasses, and took them to the kitchen, washing them with a clatter that was clearly meant to show her displeasure. She didn't apologize, but for me, it was a victory. The next day was silent and tense. She stayed in her room and I worked at my desk, the only sound the clicking of my keyboard. I felt a sliver of guilt, wondering if I'd been too harsh. But then I'd remember the smirk on her face as she demanded I refill her glass, and the guilt would vanish. That evening, around 7 p.m., she came out of her room, dressed in jeans and a hoodie. "I'm going to the library," she muttered, not looking at me, "to study." I was surprised, but relieved that she was making an effort. "Okay," I said. "That's fine. Just be home by 10, please." She just nodded and left. For the first time all week, the apartment felt like my own again. I relaxed. I watched a movie, tidied up, and actually enjoyed the peace and quiet. But then I looked at the clock. It was 10:15 p.m., then 10:30. My relief began to curdle into annoyance, which then slowly morphed into worry. I called her phone. Straight to voicemail. I called again. Voicemail. By 11:30, I was pacing my living room, my heart starting to pound. This wasn't like her. She was entitled and rude, but not reckless. Where could she be? Then I saw it. My laptop was on the coffee table where I'd left it, but the screen was on. Chloe must have used it before she left. Her social media page was still open. I knew it was an invasion of privacy, but a cold dread was creeping up my spine. I clicked on her private messages. My eyes scanned the list of recent chats. And then I saw it. A conversation from just that afternoon with a name I didn't recognize. My blood ran cold as I read the last 2 messages she'd received. "Did you get it from your aunt's purse yet?" "Yeah, easy. See you at the warehouse at midnight. Don't be late and bring the money." For a second, the world tilted. The money. My purse. I scrambled for it, my hands shaking as I tore it open. My wallet was there, but the emergency cash I kept tucked in a side pocket. $400 was gone. The warehouse. What warehouse? Panic clawed at my throat, but I forced it down. This wasn't about the money. This was about Chloe. She was in trouble. Real trouble. My mind raced, trying to piece together the fragments. The name in the chat was Derek. I frantically scrolled up, my eyes scanning their conversation history. It was all there. Flirtatious messages, vague references to a party, and then the chilling details. Derek was older, maybe early 20s, and he'd been pressuring her to get him the money for some kind of deal happening tonight. The library was a lie. This was a setup. I didn't hesitate. I grabbed my keys and my phone, my mind a whirlwind of fear and fury. Who was this Derek? What was this deal? A million worst-case scenarios played out in my head. I ran to my car, my only clue the name of the warehouse district he'd mentioned in an earlier message. A rundown industrial park on the other side of town I knew was notorious for shady activity. As I drove, I dialed 911. My voice was surprisingly steady as I explained the situation to the dispatcher, a potential runaway niece, a suspicious online chat, a location. They told me to stay put and let them handle it, but there was no way I was sitting at home while Chloe was walking into God knows what. I told them I was already on my way and would wait for them at the entrance to the industrial park. I got there 10 minutes before midnight, my headlights cutting through the darkness of the deserted streets. The place was an eerie maze of graffiti-covered brick buildings and broken chain-link fences. I parked where the dispatcher told me to, my heart hammering against my ribs. A few minutes later, 2 patrol cars pulled up silently, their lights off. I showed the lead officer the messages on my laptop. His expression hardened as he read them. He told me to stay in my car, lock the doors, and not move no matter what I heard. Watching them disappear into the shadowy complex was the longest 5 minutes of my life. Then suddenly the night was split by flashing blue and red lights. I heard shouting, the screech of tires, and a loud crash. I couldn't see anything clearly, just silhouettes moving against the flashing lights. My entire body was trembling. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, one of the officers came back to my car. "We've got her," he said. "She's all right. A little shaken up, but she's safe." The relief was so immense I thought I was going to be sick. They brought Chloe to my car. Her face was pale, tear-streaked and smudged with dirt. The defiance was gone, replaced by a raw, childish terror. She crumpled into the passenger seat, sobbing uncontrollably. The officers explained that they'd caught Derek and his friends in the middle of a drug deal. Chloe had just been the naive girl with the cash they needed. If she hadn't stolen my money, they might have gotten a lot more than that from her. The thought sent a fresh wave of ice through my veins. The drive home was silent except for her quiet sobs. When we walked back into my apartment, she looked around as if seeing it for the first time. Not as a cute little cage, but as a safe haven. I made her a cup of tea and she finally looked at me, her eyes red and swollen. "I'm so sorry," she whispered, her voice cracking. "He told me he said he loved me, he just needed help. I was so stupid." "Yes, you were," I said, my voice firm but not unkind. "You were stupid and reckless, and you put yourself in incredible danger. You stole from me, you lied to me, and you treated me horribly." Each word landed with the weight of truth. She flinched but didn't look away. "But," I continued, my voice softening, "you're also 16, and you're my niece, and I'm just so glad you're okay." That broke her. She sobbed, and this time I sat next to her and put my arm around her shoulder. We sat like that for a long time. The next morning, I had to make the call. Laura picked up, her voice bubbly and full of stories about their cruise. When I told her what happened, the line went dead silent. Then came the tears, the shock, and the panicked questions. They were on the first flight home. When they arrived, it wasn't the dramatic reunion I expected. It was quiet and somber. Laura just held Chloe, rocking her back and forth. Mark looked at me, his eyes filled with a gratitude that needed no words. Chloe had to face the consequences: therapy, a police report, and a very long grounding. But something had changed in her. The entitlement was gone. Over the next few days before her parents came home, she was a different person. She cleaned up after herself without being asked. She said please and thank you. One afternoon, she even sat with me in the living room, and we just talked, really talked, for the first time ever. As she was leaving with her parents, she turned and gave me a fierce hug. "Thank you, Auntie," she said into my shoulder, "for everything, for saving me." And in that moment, I knew that the chaotic, terrifying week had been worth it. I hadn't just put my niece in her place. I'd shown her where her real place was safe, and with a family that, despite her best efforts, loved her more than anything.